Good afternoon, everybody. My talk today is about taking an inward step to happiness. About the mid-1980s to late 1980s, I was working in a clinic in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And unfortunately, with that population, there was a high rate of alcoholism. And to better understand their needs and how to meet them, I started going to Al-Anon. And there was this one lady at this meeting that I'll never forget. The meeting started off with a young lady who, from the beginning of the meeting, was talking about how miserable her life was because of her husband's drinking. And she pretty much talked through the whole hour that we were meeting. But getting toward the end, another lady, I'll call her name Doris, the younger woman I'll call Jane, Doris said to her that she was sorry to hear about her life being the way it was, because she herself had experienced it when she was younger. But she said, you know, if you're unhappy, it's your own damn fault. We were all kind of surprised to hear that because we felt sorry for her, and it seemed like the person with the problem wasn't her, who just wanted a happy marriage, but her husband, who was drinking. But Doris continued. She said, your husband may have an alcohol problem, but your happiness is your responsibility and no one else's. And as long as you continue to choose to make your happiness dependent on things outside yourself, which you don't have control over, then any unhappiness you experience is your own. You only have yourself to blame. And as long as you continue to choose that and you suffer the unhappiness, I'm not interested in hearing about it because it's because of your choice. And you're coming here to this meeting. It's not doing you any good. It's not doing anyone else good. And I thought about those words and how they might apply to my life, and it made a lot of sense. But what I didn't know was how to make the happiness dependent on things within. Well, about 10 years later, I was working in Detroit at that time. And I was working in the inner city area, and a lot of my patients had AIDS. Now, the thing about AIDS back then was that we didn't have the treatments we have today. You can take a few pills today, and you can pretty much suppress the virus to points that it can't be detected and live normal lives. But back then, it wasn't like that. The only thing we could do for them was to treat their opportunistic infections, and they're pretty devastating. And as time went on and the virus weakened their immune system, what would happen is that these opportunistic infections would occur more frequently and they'd be more severe until we couldn't successfully treat them anymore, and they would die. And at that time in my professional life was probably the one was most marked by suffering and death. And as they got more ill and I was working with them more closely, I started to see myself in them. And I was wondering how I would respond when that time comes and I'm in that amount of suffering and I'm about ready to give up my life. As time went on and my search took me eventually to going to a Zen monastery and searching for answers about these questions I had about my own life and mortality. And at one of the meetings, or one of the talks, a senior monk had mentioned things about life, and he said that AIDS isn't the problem. Well, when I heard that, I was pretty irate. I had seen these people suffer. I'd seen it firsthand, and I was particularly angered by that. So later after the talk, I went up to him, and I said, how can you say that? And he said, oh, please don't misunderstand me. Well, I'm not saying that AIDS isn't a problem. I'm saying it isn't the problem. The problem overall, the ultimate, is that our fear of death. Our fears we create, and our fears we can uncreate. And until we deal with them, and until we answer them in a resolute way, we're always going to have the doorway open for unhappiness. With those words, it started to make a little more sense what Doris was talking about dealing with things inside. But I didn't know how to deal with the fears. What he said made sense, but I didn't know how to deal with the fears. Well, at the monastery, the abbot would say to everybody, he would say these phrases over and over again, and it applied to everyone. He said that we are perfect and complete, lacking nothing. All we could ever hope for, we already have. All we ever hope to be, we already are. Nothing can be added and nothing can be taken away. We never fail to cover the ground on which we stand. I didn't fully understand those words when he first talked about them, because I didn't feel perfect, I didn't feel complete. What I found out later was that we may not express this perfect or complete nature, but that's what we are. And I didn't feel like I had all that I wanted, and things I was working for. But he also said, don't believe this just because I say it, believe it because it's proven true to you. So as I continued with the monastery, and I practiced follow their meditation, I found that I was able to discontinue or bring down all the chatter and the talk in my mind and bring my mind into silence. And when I had done that, it was possible to just have my mind rest in a global, abiding awareness. And it was in that, surprisingly enough, there was a natural arising of a sense that everything's okay. I'm reminded of the words of St. Juliana of Norwich, where she said, all is well, all is well. All manners of things shall be well. And she realized that when she was in the process of dying. Along with that came a sense that there was nothing to lose, like the abbot had talked about. And along with that, the fears started to come down. And not only in meditation there was that sense, but it started to go out into the other parts of my life. And I began to understand what the senior monk was talking about, which enriched even more what Doris was talking about. There was a monk there, a female monk, that didn't have it easy at the monastery. She was older. She had a lot of medical problems. The physical layout of the monastery wasn't easy for her. The food's never been appetizing when I've been there, and the beds have never been comfortable. And you're always told what to do. But I was always amazed at how she was always happy. And I asked her how she was like that, what was her secret? And she said that she wasn't always like that. And I said, oh, what happened? What changed? And she said, well, I realized one day I can choose to be miserable or I can choose to be happy. I just choose to be happy. She later died, just as happy, I heard, as the day that I talked with her. And I would think if she was here right now, and there's anyone who doesn't think that that happiness is not something they deserve or that they can have, she would say, what are you choosing? I would like to end with a few quotes by a Christian mystic. He lived about 300 years ago in Spain, and before he died, he was tortured. And he said, if you want to arrive at having pleasure in everything, desire the pleasure of nothing. If you want to arrive at possessing everything, desire the pleasure of the possession of nothing. If you want to arrive at being everything, desire to be nothing. And if you want to arrive at knowing everything, desire to know nothing.